Hey, what's up, everybody? God, it's been a while since I've made one of these, hasn't it? Fortunately, the month of January has been a very boring one, and there's not a whole lot for me to cover. I kid, of course. Yeah, it's been kind of a crazy month for professional wrestling, specifically the WWE, but there is a lot for me to cover. But why have I been gone so long? Well, there's been a lot going on in my personal life, a lot of good news, actually. First and foremost, I'm going to let you all know, the wife is pregnant. I'm going to be a daddy. That's pretty cool. I'm super, super excited about that, obviously. Baby is due this summer, and that is going to take up a lot of my time. What does that mean for video production? It's kind of like touch and go, see how it goes, as we're kind of figuring things out and trying to move into a new house and all that other fun stuff, starting our family and all that other good, fun, awesome stuff. It is a very exciting time, very scary time in a good way, because a lot of things are going to be changing. But yeah, we've known about her being pregnant since November, so I've been kind of keeping it under wraps lately. But now it's like we're starting to tell everybody and everything. So I think now is a good time to kind of let you guys know on what's going on. So if you don't hear from me for long stretches of time, it's because I'm dealing with that and all of that good stuff. We also had a COVID scare. We got COVID right after Christmas, and it kind of screwed up our New Year's plans, but we both made it through. She made it through. Baby's okay, everything like that. So I made it through. Obviously, or I wouldn't be here right now, but everything is good. Everything is good in that regard. But it was like having a bad flu. I'll say that. We were bedridden. I think each of us, she got sick first, and she was bedridden for a day. And then I got sick, and I was bedridden for about a day and a half. But we bounced back pretty well, and we're all doing well now, so that's good. Now, I do have updates on projects that I'm working on. First of all, this channel. I've considered making changes to the channel and how I get content out. YouTube continues to be a source of frustration for me, and I've considered posting my content on other platforms. We'll see how that goes. Any suggestions, please post in the comments down below, but YouTube continues to be a pest, and I'm looking to not move away from YouTube, but to have other options in case YouTube becomes no longer an option, because they might pull me tomorrow. Who knows? But so that's something that's going on. As far as the actual content, I have considered... I'll never go to TikTok because I don't trust TikTok because I think it's a cybersecurity shit show over there. So I will never use TikTok, but I have considered using YouTube Shorts as a way to get kind of quick and easy content out to you guys, which would probably be better given my current schedule and how everything is going. The next video I'll release will be my next heel or face video, which I'll have to check the polls to see who won, but I'm pretty sure it was the Dudley Boys. That'll be the next one. That should be out within the next couple of weeks. And I also have a couple ideas for some WrestleMania related videos coming out. Nothing as major as some of my old past ones, like showcasing the Immortals or rebooking WrestleMania or anything crazy like that, but definitely a couple of fun WrestleMania video ideas that hopefully you guys enjoy. So I'm going to try and get those out to you as we move into WrestleMania season and all the excitement that comes along with that. So that is it on the YouTube side of things. Now, what about my book? Godzilla, the Monster Fight Record. I haven't had too many concrete updates for you guys regarding the status of the book because it's been in the hands of an editor for the last few months, or volume 1 has been in the hands of an editor for the last few months. And so it's been kind of like slow trickles as far as updates on that goes. But I can say right now that volume 1 is nearing completion. That one's almost publication ready, and I've completed my draft on volume 2. Now, as far as actually publishing the books, I have elected to go the self-publishing route. So you'll be seeing it later this year. If everything goes according to plan, you'll be seeing it later this year. I'm shooting for late summer. They'll start popping up on the Kindle store and various other online self-publication tools. Like, I believe Nook is one of them and other things. Apple has one. Barnes & Nobles has one. So I'll be publishing through those venues. And why have I elected to go that route? The main reason is I've reached out to publication houses. And in a lot of cases, the ones that would be interested, they say it might take up to 3 months just to have a meeting with me to see if they would be interested in publishing the book. And when I say publication houses that might be interesting, I mean publication houses that would be interested in the content that I'm producing, which is a Godzilla win-loss fight record. The ones who would potentially be interested in publishing such a thing, I wouldn't be able to get a meeting with them for several months. And then if they decide to move forward and publish the book, that'll take additional time. Now, normally I'm a very patient guy. I would be more than willing to wait the amount of time and get the book out with a publication house, except Godzilla Fever is going to be kicking in this year because there's a new movie being released by Toho that's due for release in November, and the next MonsterVerse film is due for release, I believe, March of next year, although it's a MonsterVerse film, so it's most likely going to get pushed back. They have not released any of those things on time yet. Something always happens, so I'll be shocked if they actually meet that initial release date. But Godzilla Fever is going to be really kicking in, and that's going to be augmented by the fact that we just had Shin Ultraman, and the Gamera Netflix show is coming out later this year, so kaijus are going to be on the brain. So I want to get on it now, and the quickest way to get it out is the self-publication route. And I can't afford to wait like another year and a half for this book to come out. And it's like, no, I got to jump on this now while Godzilla is going to be fresh on everybody's mind, and fans are going to be interested in buying Godzilla material. Now, in electing to go this route, that means that I have to handle self-promotion. I have to handle, getting art cover, art style, book design, and things like that on my own. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm fully aware of resources like Fiverr and Reedsy and things like that to hire people to do these type of things. But if anybody's interested and thinks they would be good at tackling things like the book cover and things like that, feel free to post down below and see, I'll definitely consider it, because again, I'm kind of learning as I go, and I'm kind of flying blind here, and we'll see how it all turns out. I can say that I have reached out to people about writing the foreword for the 2 volumes. I won't say who they are, but 2 people are, well, I've reached out to 3. 3 people that I have an immense amount of respect for, and were kind of inspirations for me deciding to ultimately write this Godzilla fight record book. And I'm in touch with them right now, nothing concrete. I've sent emails to some, gotten some replies back and things like that. So that's exciting, and that was pretty cool. So that's one thing I'm not as concerned about right now, because it's like, oh, the forward, I might have that down. But as far as like the design of the book and the book cover, things like that, those are things I'm going to have to reach out to other sources and do that stuff on my own. So it's very exciting, but it is a very long process. But the way things are looking right now, this thing should be released digitally. Again, I'm shooting for like late August, early September. That's kind of the time frame I want to get it out. So we will see how all that goes. But it is a very exciting process. I've been working on this thing since 2020, when we were all trapped inside. It's like, I'll rewatch all the Godzilla movies. Yeah, I'll write a book. Here we go. It's been a project that's been a few years in the making, but a very exciting one. And it's we're rounding third base and we're sliding into home. We're almost there. And again, I wish I had more concrete updates for you guys regarding its state, but that's the state of it right now. It's just kind of like waiting for the editor to finish Volume 1. I've got my draft ready for Volume 2, and then we'll start that process again and take care of some of those other odds and ends to get the book ready for publication later this year. So that is where all of that stands, and that is what's going on in my life right now. So as you can imagine, I've been a little busy and things have been a little crazy, but it's a very exciting time for sure. Now, as I get caught up on the current events in the last month of professional wrestling, I want to get the bad news out of the way first and cover that stuff. There were 2 significant wrestling deaths that occurred while I was on my off time for the holidays, and that was, first of all, Don West, the famous TNA Impact Wrestling commentator, one of the original voices of the company, succumbed to cancer late in the year. And very sad to lose Don. I was a avid TNA watcher back in their Spike TV days. And I remember I was actually watching way back when they were on FSN. That was when I first got into TNA. I didn't watch the weekly pay-per-view era because I was like, I'm not buying a pay-per-view every week. That's ridiculous. But but I did start watching when they got onto FSN, and Don West and Mike Tenay were the voices, the original commentary team. And I have a lot of fond memories of Don. You know, what he lacked in wrestling knowledge, which he didn't really need to have because that's what Mike Tenay was for, he more than made up for in enthusiasm and excitement. And basically his job was to be a mark for the product, and he did it 1,000-fold. He was great. And actually, you know, Don is also famous for selling sports memorabilia. And I remember the first time I saw him was on one of the shopping channels. My sister was into Beanie Babies back when Beanie Babies was like huge. It was, you know, it was like this pop culture phenomenon that just kind of took over for a while. And she was watching the shopping channel to get information on Beanie Babies because she was trying to collect them all. And they had this guy who was hawking Beanie Babies, and he sounded like it was the greatest thing on planet Earth, and it was so funny to watch this guy go absolutely insane over Beanie Babies, and I was kind of like, I was watching it with her, and we were both just laughing, because he was so excited, he was so jazzed up about Beanie Babies, and I turned to, and I was like 12 or 13 at this point. I remember turning to my sister and goes like, I kind of want to buy them now. Because of the way he's selling it. It's so great. I mean, and sure enough, it was Don West who was doing it. I wish I could find footage of it because it was super, super funny. And it was so great. But that was him. He was there, you know, he was hired to do a job and he did the job. And when it came to TNA wrestling, he was hired to do a job and he more than held up his end of the bargain because he was so much fun and so exciting and so great to listen to. And he really helped shape TNA's personality in those early years, especially when they were on Spike TV, and he gave them a unique voice that no other wrestling company quite had. And I can also say that Mike Tenay and Don West are also responsible for the greatest wrestling gif of all time. I love that thing. I love that thing so much. It's so fantastic. But I was really sad to hear that Don West had passed away because I had so many fond memories of him calling TNA. I mean, he was one of the like attractions. It was like in the early days, I watched TNA for AJ Styles, America's Most Wanted, Abyss, Monty Brown, and Don West. Like, they were the main reasons I watched TNA, and I enjoyed watching it in those early days. So, you know, it was very sad to hear that he had passed, and I thought it was great that Impact did a tribute to him at Hard to Kill because he was such an important part of that company's history. And yeah, very sad loss. I was sorry to hear it, and of course my best wishes go to his friends and family during what I'm sure was a very tough time to deal with that sickness and everything. But yeah, gonna miss you, Don. You were really, really special, and you made TNA a lot of fun to watch. And he will be missed, for sure. Now, the other sad wrestling death that took place, and probably the one that had the greater impact on the wrestling world, was the very tragic loss of Jay Briscoe, which happened because of a car accident. And that was not his fault. It's just one of those tragic things that happens. You know, it's one of those reminders that you never know what's going to happen or when is, you know, life going to hit you like a bolt of lightning. And it's just one of those very sudden, very tragic things to happen. And, you know, obviously the loss of Jay Briscoe really impacted the wrestling community, not just the fans, but obviously the performers, because the Briscoes have been around for the last 20 some odd years and have worked with many of the top stars in WWE and AEW and all these other companies. And, you know, everyone from AJ Styles and Samoa Joe to your Sami Zayns and Kevin Owens and your Young Bucks and your Cody Rhodes and all sorts of guys. They've worked with them. They've bled with them, and they've done everything imaginable up and down the roads with the Dem Boys. And I always admired the Briscoes for being unrelenting, you know, kind of like living the gimmick or at least it felt like they were living the gimmick while watching the match. It's just these deranged hillbillies that were crazy and were willing to do anything. And they were, you talk about great tag teams over the years. I think it's safe to say that the greatest tag team in Ring of Honor history, and they've had some great ones, like the Bucks and the Motor City Machine Guns and World's Greatest Tag Team, and Haas and Benjamin were there. The Kings of Wrestling were a really great one, Claudio and Chris Hero. But I mean, when you think of the great tag teams in Ring of Honor, nobody's been more synonymous with that company than the Briscoe brothers. They are one of those gold standard iconic talents that are just tied to that company. And there were certain things that prevented them from making it to bigger stages. I feel like they deserve to be on bigger stages, whether it be WWE or AEW. But, all of this talk, WWE would never touch them with a 10-foot pole. And AEW couldn't touch them because Warner Brothers demanded that they not be a part of the program, which caused a bit of an uproar when they couldn't immediately do a Jay Briscoe tribute show. And I think once they got enough backlash, they were like, okay, we can have Mark Briscoe do the Jay Briscoe tribute match with Jay Lethal, which was lovely. I thought everything about that was very classy, very well done. And a loving tribute to a great, great talent, and by all indications, a great man who was a great father. And, when I saw that video of him doing a cheerleading routine and practicing a cheerleading routine with his daughter, because I hadn't seen that until after the news had broken. And that hit me a little deep, especially given my current situation. I'm going to be a daddy this year. I'm going to become one. And to see something like that, and to see, and knowing that little girl's going to grow up without her dad now, it's very sad and very tragic. And it was one of those things that kind of hit me, brought about the waterworks a little bit. And I was like, man, it was so tragic, so senseless. And, in wrestling, you kind of expect, as sad as it sounds, you kind of expect wrestling deaths, like whether it be drug overdoses or body breaking down over a long period of time. And that's not what this was. This was just a very senseless and tragic loss that obviously nobody wanted to have happen, but it's just one of those things that reminds you just how precious life really is. And I thought it was very classy, to throw them some credit too. I thought it was very classy that WWE did a tribute to him. NXT, the night that Jay Briscoe died, they made a special announcement, halted the show and made a special announcement of what happened. I thought that was very classy of them to do that. I don't normally praise WWE for being classy, but that was a very classy thing to do, especially considering that he never worked for them, the Briscoes never worked for them or anything, but enough of the people on their roster did work with them, and obviously this was something that impacted a lot of people throughout the wrestling community. And I think now, it's a big loss. And they just came off of like that fantastic trilogy of matches with FTR, like the best tag matches of the year. When I did my end of the year video, I had them listed as some of my favorite, the top 10 matches of the year. I had all 3 of the Briscoe FTR matches on there. That's how good they were. And it seemed like there was a push to let them go to AEW, and I think they would have done great in AEW if they had been allowed to. Now, again, going back to the Warner thing, everybody complained. It's like, oh, woke garbage, complaining about tweets from 10 years ago. I'll say this. Warner, the executives are not part of the woke mafia or whatever. They're just afraid of the woke mafia, and they don't want any backlash. So they thought, by doing what they did, they thought that they were avoiding a backlash. And it blew up in their faces because the wrestling community basically told them to go piss up a rope. Why aren't you letting us do a Jay Briscoe tribute? And they relented and allowed the Mark Briscoe Jay Lethal match. But, man, when I think of, again, looking back on the Briscoe brothers, it's just a shame that they were not allowed to be on a larger stage. But maybe being the best tag team on the indies is kind of their legacy in a sense, where they worked with everybody that was coming up and were just these gold standards of tag team excellence outside of the major companies. And, I grew up in Maryland, currently in the process of moving back to Maryland, but in this area, the Briscoes have a bit of a following because they're from Delaware, which is right close by. And I remember when friends and I went to that Ring of Honor pay-per-view where they wrestled the Young Bucks and retained the tag titles. Very hot match, easily the best match on the show. I forget which show it was, what the name of it was. It was the one that had Cody and the Bucks were still there, and Cody was in the main event. I do remember that, and but it was that tag match that really, really stood out and was the match that everybody was talking about when the show was over. And I remember my friends and I, we were going to our car, and there was a large group of people gathered outside the venue, and sure enough, it was the Briscoes that had come out, and they were saying hi to the fans and everything. We didn't go up and talk to them or anything because the crowd was pretty big, but it was still cool to see. It's like, wow, all these people are crowding around the Briscoes, and it was like, yeah, they've got a big following around here because they're from nearby. And that was really cool to see. And also, I was there WrestleMania weekend. This was WrestleMania 29 weekend when I was up in New York, and my friend Eric and I, we went to the Ring of Honor show the night before Mania, and Jay was in the main event, and he won the Ring of Honor World title from then Kevin Steen, now better known as Kevin Owens. And that was an amazing show, and it was good to see. It's like, oh, Jay Briscoe won the title. That was really cool. And now it's like that memory's even more special because of everything that's happened. It's, again, it's just so sad and so senseless. But, again, going back to the Warner thing, it does kind of blow my mind that, like, Ezra Miller and Amber Heard, like, there's still talks of them being involved in the DCEU moving forward, but the Briscoes are verboten. Like, it's one of those weird things where it's like, I don't understand it, I don't know the rules, but a lot of what they do is, because all these executives care about is making money and avoiding backlash. And by making the moves that they're making, they think that they're avoiding backlash. When, in this case, the wrestling community bit them in the butt, and we're like, no, this is horseshit. You put the Briscoes on that show, you jerk. And sure enough, we at least got an appropriate Jay Briscoe tribute match, and I wish Mark all the best and his ventures moving forward. I was amazed by his poise, being able to work that match as confidently and as well as he did. I thought that he did an amazing job, and I look forward to seeing what he does moving forward, because he's going to be carrying on that Briscoe's legacy. Them boys, reach for the sky boys, and all that other stuff. God, I love the Briscoes. They're so much fun, and Jay will definitely be missed. So, also, the wrestling community has come together and been donating money to Jay's family because they're still paying medical bills because Jay wasn't the only one in the car. So I'm posting links in the description to places where you can donate money or buy the Jay Briscoe t-shirt, all profits of which go to the Briscoe family, to Jay Briscoe's family. So kind of like a good instance of, wrestling fans providing for the people that have given us so much over the years. So those links will be in the description. Be sure to check those out. But one last note on this. Rest in peace, Jay Briscoe. You will definitely be missed, and my best wishes go to his friends and family during what is assuredly a very tough and very difficult time. All right, now it's time to go over all of the shows that I've missed over the last month with Wrestle Kingdom, Hard to Kill, Raw 30, and of course the Royal Rumble. And I'm going to start with the Royal Rumble because it's the most recent and the one that's got everybody talking right now, and it's the kickoff to WrestleMania season. So I'll get to all those other shows, but for right now, let's focus on Royal Rumble and get through all of that. So what did I think of the Royal Rumble? The big stuff delivered. And I'll say that much. I definitely feel like there was a lot of stuff that didn't work, and there was a lot of like middling, kind of dull material, but the stuff that really needed to deliver and was really, really good, I really liked. So the Royal Rumble was overall a worthwhile experience, especially if you've been following the Bloodline storyline, which of course has been the best storyline in all of wrestling going right now. I fight me on that, really. Like the Sami Zayn Roman Reigns stuff has been unbelievable, especially with some of the recent segments that they've done on TV. Going over the Rumble from start to finish, Pat McAfee returned to do commentary. That was a welcome return. That was nice to see. But we opened up with the Men's Rumble, which I think surprised a lot of people. Now, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I'm not a fan of having two Rumbles on one show. I think it's overkill, and I think once you do one, it kind of takes away from the second one. And it just doesn't work for me. It just feels like, it feels like too much to have two 1 hour matches on one show. The men's Rumble was actually closer to like what was Gunther's time, like 111 or something crazy like that. So it's a lot, and it's hard to keep that excitement up for 2 Royal Rumbles. So, and I've talked about it online. It's like maybe they should think about switching back and forth between the men. It's like the men do it one year and then the women do it the next year, or find some kind of solution for this, because for right now it doesn't make for a well-paced show. That's my whole point. So, and I'm the same way. I don't like doing 2 War Games. I don't like doing 2 Elimination Chambers. I don't like doing 14 ladder matches. I don't like doing 2 Money in the Banks. It's just too much to me. It should be one gimmick match of the same type on one card. And any more than that, you're just overkilling the gimmick. But anyways, we started with the men's Rumble. Couple of things to go over here. One thing that I really enjoyed about this, and a lot of the old Manias used to do this really well, I think, old Rumbles used to do this really well, is that they would build towards WrestleMania. I think the 2004 Rumble that we're not supposed to remember did a really good job of that when you look at like the Undertaker-Kane segment, the Foley-Orton bit, all of that stuff was very, very good and key to setting up WrestleMania 20. And the 1990 Rumble, one of the first Rumbles I watched back in the day, did an excellent job of that with like Andre the Giant and Haku versus Demolition, Roddy Piper versus Bad News Brown, Jake versus DiBiase, Savage versus Dusty, and all the other things that they did to build towards that WrestleMania 6 card. And of course, the big Hogan Warrior showdown, which was the big selling point, or the big talking point after that Rumble had concluded. So I thought this Rumble did a really good job of like setting up potential matches for WrestleMania, like Omos versus Braun, which I'm not opposed to. I don't hate Omos. I know that's an unpopular thing to say. I don't hate him. He's a big guy that beats people up. That's all he is. If they ever tried to put the world title on him, I would probably be a little bit more negative towards him. But for right now, it's like, he's just a big guy that beats people up. What's the problem? I don't see what the problem is. But a potential Lesnar versus Lashley match, maybe a triple threat with Gunther. Maybe I heard one person propose the idea of like doing a 5-way for the IC title: Gunther, Sheamus, Drew, Lesnar, and Lashley, which is like, dude, that would be a stiff fest like no other. But would probably be fun. Seth Rollins versus Logan Paul, more on him in a bit, seem to be set up. Edge versus Finn Balor is one that's potentially been set up. And of course, Rey Mysterio versus Dominic, which, by the way, I have to say, I'm kind of digging the prison tough Dominic Mysterio gimmick. It's so goofy and so silly, but I kind of love it. It reminds me of when Shane McMahon first came around in 1999 and he tried to sell himself as like, it was the birth of the Mean Street Posse, where it's like, oh yeah, Shane gets into bar fights all the time. He's the toughest guy around and all this other stuff. The mean streets of Greenwich, Connecticut. And it's like, no, he's a spoiled little brat. he's not tough. And then, of course, they eventually made Shane tough, which took away some of the appeal, but you know, but in Dominic's case, he's kind of this twerp that spent one day in jail, and he's like, man, you get hard on the inside, and that type of stuff. And I think it's so silly, I kind of like it. But there was also that awesome spot between Logan Paul and Ricochet, which, of course, was the main highlight of the Rumble that everybody's talking about, that looked amazing when they did it. I've seen similar spots done before, like I think Punk and Kofi did one in one of the Elimination Chambers that was similar, but the way this one was shot just looked incredible. And Logan Paul, I think he's a douchebag, but man, he really comes through when he laces the boots. I can't deny that. And you had Gunther's performance, which was impressive. He was kind of the Iron Man and the tough man that lasted all the way to the end. Kind of reminded me of Kane in 2001 a little bit. Maybe not in the number of eliminations he got, but definitely in kind of like the tough guy that goes Iron Man style all the way to the end. And of course, Cody Rhodes got the win. So he got his big Hulk Hogan comeback thing where he came back, won at number 30, which, you know, one of the talking points of the Rumble was that number 30 never wins. And that seemed to change in 2007 when Undertaker came in at 30 and won. And now it's like, I feel like 30 wins almost every year, it seems. But in any case, I thought the Rumble was very enjoyable. Some people were disappointed that there were no big surprises like Austin or Rock or Jay White or John Cena or anything like that. And my response to that is that WWE did not promote any of these people. This was all internet speculation. WWE never promoted like a big surprise that I'm aware of. So I'm not going to be disappointed in something that WWE themselves never hinted at, suggested, or promoted. That would be silly. The people who are disappointed by that are disappointed because they let their imaginations run wild on the internet, because speculation was like, oh, it's going to be Austin versus Roman, or oh, it's going to be Rock versus Roman, and things like that. It was like, that hasn't been promoted, teased, or anything. And I'm not going to, and I'm the type of guy that's like, I'm not going to say it's going to happen until I see it for myself on the programming, or until WWE starts dropping hints that it's going to happen, which they didn't do. So I'm not going to hold that against them. I thought the men's Rumble, not one of my favorite Rumbles or anything like that, but I thought it was good. I thought it was very entertaining, and I was happy Cody won. Cody's my guy. With the current situation with Sami Zayn, and I'll elaborate on that in a little bit, but there was some fear that maybe the crowd would turn on Cody because they wanted Sami to win, but that didn't really happen, fortunately. They didn't even put Sami in the match, which I thought was a good move, because you run the risk of Cody getting turned on if you do that. And it allowed Sami to have his big moment later in the night. So yeah, I thought the men's Rumble worked very well, but yeah, opening up with the Rumble kind of takes away some of the energy from the rest of the show. The Bray Wyatt LA Knight Pitch Black match was about as bad as I expected it to be. Not great. I didn't like that they called it a Mountain Dew Pitch Black match, which just sounds stupid. And all the theatrics of it, the lighting, having the lights turned off, which, by the way, I'll say this right now. Mood lighting doesn't work. It didn't work when Kane's early matches were all in red. It didn't work for Sin Cara. It didn't work for The Fiend. It doesn't work. Stop fucking around with the lights. I want to see what's going on. And so the whole presentation looked gaudy. It looked like something out of Batman Forever, which everybody compared it to. It looked like, to me, I was getting like bad memories of the Sting Vampiro Human Torch match, which also had like a ridiculous spot to close out the thing. It wasn't good. And my hopes of Bray Wyatt working this time around in WWE are becoming dashed, because it's like, oh god, he just keeps falling into these bad habits of like going a little too far with the creativity, and this was a case where it did not work. And again, I don't know whose idea it was. Maybe this is something that was forced on them because of the promotional element. I don't know, but whatever it was, it didn't work. And didn't do anybody involved any favors, which is a shame, because I like Bray and I like LA Knight. I've liked LA Knight since he was Eli Drake in Impact. I was like, that guy's got something. And he had a brief run in NWA, and I'm like, that guy's got something. He should be on a bigger platform. And fortunately, he's in WWE now, and people are like, hey, this guy can talk. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I've known about him for years. He's really good. But this match didn't work for anybody. And the Uncle Howdy stuff, I'm done with it at this point. I don't care anymore. Like, I'm done. They've officially lost my interest with this thing. Then we got Bianca Belair versus Alexa Bliss for the Raw Women's title. It was a match that happened, and that's about it. That's all it was. It was just a match. And they keep teasing that Alexa's going to get tied in with this Uncle Howdy Bray Wyatt stuff. Again, I don't care. Don't care. Bianca retained. That's fine. Then we got the Women's Rumble, which was not as good as the men's. Again, I think part of that is because they had to follow another Rumble, and if you're the Rumble that comes after the first one, unless they do something crazy, it's not really going to work. And this one just kind of felt like a retread of what we saw earlier in the night, because it's the same friggin' match in a sense. So again, I would be happier if they just went to doing one Rumble a year, or maybe, since WrestleMania is now a 2-night event, maybe make the Rumble a 2-night event and just do one Rumble the first night and one Rumble the second night. That might be the way to go. I don't know. But in any case, I was kind of worn out by the Women's Rumble. They tried to do something neat with Bayley and Damage Control where they would kind of dominate the whole thing, but it didn't really pay off or do anything neat. The only option to win this thing, I felt like, was Rhea Ripley, because she's the only one that was in this match that felt like she had any kind of intrigue or momentum heading into it. I thought maybe Asuka might win when she came out with her old school get up and everything, but overall, it's like Rhea Ripley, even when she came out at number 1, I'm like, she still might pick to win this. And sure enough, she went all the way and won it. And is now set to face Charlotte at WrestleMania. That's all well and good. I have no issues with that. It's just kind of like, it's fine. The only other standout of this match, I thought Raquel Rodriguez did pretty well. She kind of made a name for herself a little bit in this one, but the Women's Rumble was just kind of weak sauce compared to the men's, and I think part of that is because it came second. I think that was a part of it. But following the Rumble, I did not watch the Hardy concert. That was something I immediately fast forwarded over, because I didn't watch the Rumble until the next day, so I just fast forwarded over that. And then we got the main event, Kevin Owens losing the WWE Universal title match to Roman Reigns. The match itself almost didn't matter. Like, it's one of those situations that goes beyond star ratings or anything like that. We were just caring about what Sami Zayn was going to do and what the payoff was going to be. And that ending angle where Sami Zayn hit Roman Reigns with the chair was amazing, and one of the best pieces of wrestling storytelling I've seen in a long time. And it's like, this is the stuff that I want to see in wrestling. It's star ratings don't matter, big spots don't matter. I want to see this type of stuff, and this is something that WWE lacks most of the time. But when they get it right, man, they really, really get it right. And this is a case where they got it right, because that crowd was all in on Sami Zayn after this was over. And little things like Jey Uso walking out after he had defended Sami during the trial segment on Raw, which was easily the best segment of that show. That was really good, and it makes you wonder, where do Jay's loyalties lie moving forward? Everybody seems to think that it's going to be Sami and Kevin versus the Usos for the tag titles at WrestleMania, which I think would make it, like, given the storyline buildup, like one of, if not the biggest tag title match in WrestleMania history, given the Usos' longest reign and the current storyline and everything. That's a potential, like, you can have that main event night one, potentially, if you wanted to go that route, I think. But I'll say more about main eventing WrestleMania in just a minute. But so many of the things that they've done in the storyline. I talked about the trial segment, Sami, that's not very Usy segment where Jay broke character was a beautiful disaster. Loved it. The interactions between Roman and Sami, the Cena tag match, which was kind of the start to Sami's descent and loss of favor with Roman Reigns, where he took the pin in that match. That match worked out great for the storyline. I think maybe if you tuned into the match to see John Cena, you might have been disappointed, because he didn't do hardly anything. But for the story between Sami and Roman, it added a lot to that story, because, like I said, it started Sami's descent into losing favor with the bloodline, and all of that worked out great, and it all led to this amazing payoff that ended this pay-per-view. And now you're wondering, where are things going to go from here? Now that leads me into the Cody Rhodes versus Sami Zayn debate. Now, who should main event WrestleMania? Should it be Cody Rhodes or should it be Sami Zayn? Now, the talk is that Sami's going to main event Elimination Chamber against Roman Reigns. I think that's definitely a possibility. Cody seems to be well on the road based on everything that we saw on Raw this week. Seems to be on the road to facing Roman at WrestleMania. Given that WrestleMania is a 2-night event, there's a possibility that Roman could defend the title against both of them. Or maybe have a non-title match against Sami and then defend the title against Cody on night 2. Do the Sami match on night 1 and then defend the title against Cody at night 2. I don't know. There's all kinds of possibilities that they can take this, and online there's been kind of a debate. Should it be Cody or should it be Sami that faces Roman? I like that. I don't know how this is all going to play out. Like, coming out of the Rumble, I'm like, are they going to change it? Are they going to make it a triple threat? Like, what's going to happen? But to me, that's exciting. I think that's really exciting to have that, because I don't know exactly what's going to happen, and you've got two very interesting potential challengers, because Cody came back at WrestleMania last year, said he was going to win the WWE title, had the matches with Seth, got hurt, and had to go on the road to recovery to getting back, and then wins the Royal Rumble, and now he's in a place to kind of complete his story from last year and complete his return to the WWE. But then you have this whole Sami situation. Sami's kind of this X factor right now, and I think Cody is kind of a Bret Hart style babyface with like smatterings of Hulk Hogan a little bit, where he's like the big hero of the situation with a little bit of an underdog appeal, kind of like Bret, but kind of the rah-rah USA guy that, you know, a little bit of the Hogan superhero aspect to him. I've been a supporter of Cody for years and years and years. I think he's a fantastic talent. And you have Sami Zayn, who's like this lovable idiot babyface, kind of like Mick Foley in 98, 99, where you want him to have that big sympathetic win. And I think there's ways to kind of make both of them look good in this scenario. I think the way it's looking, they could very well do the tag title match against the Usos, and I think that would work as long as Sami and Kevin wins. I can also foresee a scenario kind of like WrestleMania 15, where Foley's not a participant in the main event as a competitor, but he counts the 3 against Rock and gets revenge over everybody that wronged him in the process, and Foley gets that big moment. I could potentially see SamI causing Roman's downfall at WrestleMania, leading to maybe more matches between Roman and SamI, maybe leading to SamI getting the title shot against Cody down the road, or putting SamI on a path to where he could potentially win the title later. I don't know. But for right now, I'm kind of banking on Cody being the guy to walk out of WrestleMania with the belt, which, man, that's going to make AEW look really bad. But right now I'm banking on Cody being the guy. But again, there's a lot of different ways they can go with this. And for me, all of them work and all of them are interesting. They could very well like have Cody removed from the situation and just do SamI versus Roman. I doubt they'll do that. Because it's like it feels like once they have their mindset on somebody being in the WrestleMania main event, they don't change it. If somebody gets over in the meantime, they'll just add him to the match and make it a triple threat. Like, I think to WrestleMania 30, like, everybody and their grandmother knew it should have been Daniel Bryan, but they were just dead set on Batista and Randy Orton for whatever reason, and they had to change, but they didn't take Batista out of the match. WrestleMania 2000, they basically promised that spot to Big Show, even though it made no sense for him to be in the match. They kept him in it when it should have been Triple H and Rock one-on-one. The women's three-way, it should have been Becky versus Ronda, but they were dead set on having Charlotte there, so Charlotte had to stay there. Things like that. So I don't think you'll get a scenario where Cody is completely removed from the situation and is not involved in the title match at all, because they don't like to do that. But again, we'll all see. It's very exciting, and I'm looking forward to see how it all plays out. And the road to WrestleMania is very intriguing right now, especially with the main event scene and even the tag title scene. Where do the Usos fit into all this? Where does Kevin Owens fit into all this? So there's a lot of X factors, a lot of balls up in the air right now, and it's going to be a very interesting and exciting road to WrestleMania, I think. Now, what else has been going on in WWE besides WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble? Well, Vince McMahon is back. That was a crazy thing that took place, and the internet kind of lost its mind when it happened. So Vince is back in the company. Stephanie McMahon is gone, and right now the situation is looking like he's looking to sell the company. There was a false statement going around that he had completed a sale with Saudi Arabia, which had everybody panicking and losing their minds. So right now, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with Vince and how this is all going to play out. He's got lawsuits up the yin-yang that are going on right now from other shareholders who are upset by the situation. It's a very messy and crazy situation from a very messy and crazy guy. Vince McMahon is a lunatic, and he has been the spark that has ignited a fire that is that we don't know exactly what it means for WWE yet. So far, it doesn't appear as if it's affected creative. Like, Triple H seems to still be heading in the same direction that he would like to go in, and presenting the show in the same way, which has its own pluses and negatives. But overall, it seems like creative hasn't been impacted too much by Vince McMahon's return, which is probably a good thing. And yeah, there's a lot of just kind of, let's see how it all plays out, because we don't really know what's going to happen. I'll say this, of all the potential buyers of WWE, I don't think Tony Khan's going to get it. There's been talks that Tony has expressed interest. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that would ever happen. But, there's the much talked about Saudi Arabia sale, which would be absolutely insane to me. I can't even imagine that. But the one that I really, really don't want to get it is Disney, because I've seen what Disney does with the properties they get. They ruined Star Wars for me and turned it into factory assembled junk. They ruined the Muppets. They ruined, they had Marvel. They took Marvel to like the highest of highs, and then they ruined it. They even ruined their own movies with all those bad remakes of like Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King and all that other stuff. They're just, Disney is just a sludge factory at this point to me. It's like they put together meaningless garbage for the masses to consume, and that's all they do. And it makes me sad that things that I actually loved, like Star Wars, like the Muppets, have been reduced to just dry, flavorless sludge for people to consume. And with all the rules that they have in place for their content, I would rather Disney not get WWE. That's just my take. I'd rather they not get it. Although, you know, if Vince McMahon was still in control of creative, like, there probably wouldn't be much of a difference between what Disney would do and what Vince McMahon would do. Because Disney's, you know, for years, WWE produced factory-assembled garbage, and Disney has perfected the craft of producing factory-assembled garbage. So, you know, maybe it would be a match made in heaven. I don't know. But I also fear, like, you know, we talk about, like, censoring the old material and things like that. And Peacock has made some of those concessions. And NBC have made some of those concessions of, like, kind of removing some of the less than savory elements of WWE's past. Personally, I think history should be allowed to stand. And, you know, offensive or not, too extreme or not, I feel like that old material should be available and made, shown to the people who want to see it and want to at least get an understanding of what it was like back then in the old days. And I think if Disney got their hands on WWE, like, they would censor stuff up the ass. Like, it would be insane the level that they would go to. That's my take. I don't like Disney. I hate them. I think they're evil. But that's just my take on the matter. But this whole Vince McMahon situation is absolutely insane, absolutely crazy, and God only knows how it's going to turn out. And, you know, did anybody have Vince McMahon comes back and sells WWE to the Saudis on their bingo card? I didn't. That was something, when the news started to break online, I was like, well, that's something I didn't expect to see today. That's crazy. Fortunately, it turned out that the sale was not final, but something tells me that this is going to get crazier before, you know, before we're done here. Like, this whole situation just feels like a stick of dynamite that's ready to explode. So, again, we'll see how it all goes, but for right now, it's definitely a very crazy and very interesting situation. All right, now let's go into Raw 30, the big 30th anniversary of Monday Night Raw, which, man, it's hard to believe. God dang, that show is 30 years old. I was less than 8 years old when Raw started. I remember watching that first episode of Raw and many of the early Raws, and to see what it ultimately became is something that I could have never predicted. So it's amazing, you know, for all the talk that and all the negativity that a lot of us fans online can throw at the show. It is amazing that the show has had this enduring legacy that has lasted now 3 decades. And there was plenty to celebrate. Some things that I thought were pretty cool. It was great to hear the old Raw theme again. It's like, that's still the best Raw theme. The one from, and when I say the old Raw theme, I mean the We're All Together Now riff that used to play before the commercials and was like the main theme of Monday Night Raw for the Attitude Era years. That was the best Raw theme, easily. And the old Raw logo. Again, something about the older logos that just look better. I don't like the simplified, slimmed down, stripped down versions of logos that we see now. The old logos just look so much better. Like, you look at the Royal Rumble logo from 1990 and you look at it now, which one is better? You're going to go for the 1990 one. And same thing with Raw. It's like, which one's better, the current one or the old one? Well, the Raw 30 logo leaned towards the old one and it looks so much better. Even with the obvious joke of the XXX, which is weirdly perfect for Attitude Era Raw, that logo just looks so much better. And it's like, man, this takes me back. Back when this stuff was, you know, cutting edge and cool. But the show was not perfect. I'll say that. The Bloodline trial segment of Sami Zayn was incredible and very well done. And I popped when Sami stood up, or when Jay stood up for Sami. That, like, got me to pop huge. Great stuff. And again, this whole Bloodline situation is just great wrestling storytelling. It has been handled so well. And we got that great payoff at the Royal Rumble because of it. But things like the DX reunion were just sad. Like, it was just sad. Like, every time they do the DX reunion, it just depresses me more and more. And they threw Kurt Angle out there for some reason. Hulk Hogan's mic cutting out in the opening segment was not great and not a great start. And, you know, Hogan's embarrassments continue. It seems like every time they bring Hogan back, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And it's like, maybe it's just best to not do that anymore. This is coming from somebody that grew up a Hulkamaniac, but it's like, what benefit is there to Hulk Hogan at this point? And granted, it was a technical issue, but it still, like, didn't come off great at all. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me. There was also the situation with the cage match getting cut, which was bizarre to me because it was one of the promoted matches of the show, but they had timing issues that forced them to cut the cage match. I'm like, did you have to cut the match that you promoted? Couldn't you have cut, like, I don't know, the unadvertised 6-man tag that did nothing for anybody? Or the... what was the other one I was thinking of? Like, Charlotte and Sonya Deville got a multi-segment match. It's like, wait, you gave that match 2 segments and you couldn't make any room for the cage match? That felt weird to me, but it all ties into a certain situation that happened after the show went off the air involving the Bella Twins, my favorite people, saying that the Women's Revolution was disrespected. They weren't given enough attention on Monday Night Raw, and it led to the creation of the hashtag, something, I forget what it was exactly, but it was something Raw, WWE women deserve better, or something like that. I will say this right now, I do not like the Bella Twins. I don't like them in a house, I don't like them with a mouse, I don't like them on a train, I don't like them in the rain. I have never liked the Bella Twins. To me, they are dollar store versions of the Kardashians, who I also hate. They are rich, spoiled brats who crave attention and are bizarre, terrible narcissists that I don't think I could spend more than 5 minutes in the same room as, because they would just irritate me to no end. So that's my take on the Bellas. As far as their contributions to professional wrestling, the reality shows are really their big contribution. It gave them value beyond the wrestling ring, because in the wrestling ring they didn't contribute much. Nikki got to a point where she was okay. Brie seemed to get worse as time went on. She was horrible, absolutely horrible, and downright dangerous. People will recall certain instances where she hurt people. But part of their rant, the video they posted on Instagram, they said that, where's AJ Lee? Where's Sasha Banks? I'm like, okay, they're not going to mention AJ Lee and Sasha Banks because there's issues with them. And, Mercedes is off doing her own thing and left the company after walking out, which I'll get to her in a little bit when I get into Wrestle Kingdom. But, Paige left the company under not so great terms, so they weren't going to mention her, and she's in AEW right now. Granted, Jericho was featured quite a bit on the show, but I don't think Jericho had heat when he left, and I think that's a big part of it. Sasha Banks has heat. AJ Lee, because of who she's married to, has heat, which may or may not be fair, but that's the matter of the situation. So a lot of those women weren't going to get mentioned for various, personal reasons and how they left and why they left and things like that. So they weren't going to get much consideration, I think. And a lot of the other big moments in Raw history that involved the women is the sexy stuff that we're not supposed to get anymore, like stuff involving Sable or Tori Wilson or Deborah or, a lot of that. And we're supposed to downplay all of that stuff now. That's not allowed. And I mean, if the Bellas were involved in any great Raw moments, I don't remember it, to be quite honest. They wouldn't be high on my list. And to me, honestly, a lot of their sticking point, what sticks in their craw, is that they weren't mentioned, because they strike me as two that crave attention. I remember I was watching an episode of, might have been Total Bellas, and she was talking to Daniel. It was Nikki talking to Daniel Bryan. She was like, I'm humble. I'm very humble. Don't you think I'm humble, Daniel? I'm very humble, blah, 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 blah. And it was all this stuff. And I'm sitting there watching this, holding my head in my hand. And I'm just like, humble people don't go on and on and on about how humble they are. This woman is obnoxious. Both of them are obnoxious, and I can't stand them. And they embody that Kardashian energy where you're just like, it's all about being rich, spoiled brats. And I don't like them. So, if the women deserve better, I would rather hear it from women's talents that I respect, like Trish Stratus or Lita, or who, again, probably deserve to be mentioned a little bit more frequently on the show. Chyna probably deserved to be mentioned a little bit more frequently on the show. But when I think of Raw's great history and all the big moments, a lot of that involves Attitude Era stuff. It's going to be Stone Cold, it's going to be DX, it's going to be The Rock, it's going to be Mick Foley. That's the stuff I'm going to remember. Hulk Hogan being on this show is weird to me because I don't associate Hulk Hogan with Monday Night Raw. because to me, Raw was after his era, and that's the way. Now, if you want to do a Saturday Night's Main Event reunion, Hulk Hogan has to be there because he was the icon of that show. But yeah, as far as like, I feel like the women have gotten a lot more time on most shows now than they ever have at any other point in WWE's history. And if it was lacking on this one show, on a show where they did get a multi-segment match where Charlotte got a special introduction from Ric Flair, her father, who was wearing a suit that looked like he was wearing Dusty Rhodes polka dots, but they melted. It wasn't like the women weren't on the show at all. And if, it felt like they weren't getting enough credit, that was probably a one-night thing, because most of the shows now feel like the women get a lot of time. So, I don't know. It just felt like the Bellas were screaming and crying, not screaming and crying, but they were complaining about something that wasn't really that big of a deal on this one night. And they were advertised as being part of the show and ultimately didn't show up. So what happened there? It's like, well, I mean, you kind of contributed. By not going to the show, you kind of contributed to the women not being focused on for Monday Night Raw. And apparently they weren't happy about the spot they were given. I don't know, maybe Nikki wants to promote the 4-episode reality show where she gets married, which feels like trying to rub it in John Cena's face. I don't know. Like, I always assume the worst of them because they just strike me as horrible. But yeah, I don't care about the Bella's plight. The attention they got online is probably more attention than it deserved, and I feel like I'm giving it more attention than they deserve. They get enough attention. Trust me, they get enough. It's fine. I don't really put too much stock in what they have to say. And if that's not fair, so be it. Like, if women's performers are going to be highlighted, I'd prefer it to be women that I actually respect. Like Sherry Martel, one of the most underrated performers in the history of the business. Or Luna Vachon, who got snubbed at the Hall of Fame and got stuck into the legacy class or whatever that thing was when she deserved her own individual induction. That's my opinion. That's the stuff that gets under my skin. I don't care about the Bellas not getting the respect that they deserve, because to me, they've gotten more than they deserve. That's my take on the matter. Now let's get caught up on AEW and what they're currently doing. No major shows or anything like that to really speak of. It's just kind of, they're heading into their next pay-per-view event. And one thing that I'll say about them is that there's things that are exciting about AEW, and there are things that I enjoy. Adam Cole is back, baby. That's pretty cool. I think MJF is great as champion, and I'm enjoying the stuff that he's doing with Bryan Danielson. I think all of that stuff is really cool. They're doing some things that I enjoy. I like Darby as TNT champion. Thank God they got it off Joe. But right now, I feel like AEW is lacking in the creative department. And it's not that it's bad. It's that they're in that weird phase where, like, maybe WCW was in '94, where the show was enjoyable, but there's not that hot storyline to really keep us hooked, and there's not that really exciting angle to really keep us hooked. It's just like, oh, hey, we're doing this cool thing, oh, hey, Hulk Hogan's showing up, that's pretty cool. But there's not like a great, like, they don't have the NWO yet, and it feels like AEW is kind of lacking something big. And when you look at WWE and what they're currently doing with Sami Zayn and the Bloodline, it's like, well, why can't AEW do something like that? Because they deliver pay-per-view quality matches every week, but what does that mean? That doesn't keep people hooked, and it doesn't keep them coming back for more. It's the storylines that keep people coming back, and that's an area where they're kind of lacking right now. I don't understand some of the people that they push, that they get attached to. I don't get Wheeler Yuta. I don't get Daniel Garcia. I don't get Dante Martin. Action Andretti is kind of the new one on that list where they seem really high on him. Jury's still out. I don't see a huge star quality in him right now. Now, granted, I was wrong about Stone Cold Steve Austin. I didn't think he had a star quality until they broke him away from DiBiase and they did the King of the Ring thing, but I was wrong, but it also took a while for him to get there. And it seems weird to me that they keep pushing these kind of, I don't want to use the derogatory terms like vanilla midgets or anything like that, but it's just baffling to me that they keep getting attached to these young guys that they keep pushing when they already have Wardlow, who they basically kind of pulled the rug out from under at this point, Ricky Starks, Jungle Boy, Hook, Darby Allin, all these other young guys that legitimately got over, and they always kind of like Oh, no. We want to do stuff with Wheeler Yuta. We want to have Daniel Garcia be the main focal point of a storyline for 2 months. And it's like, but why? I would rather see more of Daddy Magic than Daniel Garcia, to be perfectly honest. And people have told me, it's like, oh, dude, you don't want to see him wrestle. He sucks. It's like, yeah, but he can talk. Can you make him a manager or something? Give that dude more mic time. Because to me, it's a shame that like all of his work is basically on one of the AEW Darks where he does commentary. It's like, dude, he should be on the main show talking more because he's really good. And one suggestion that I have to kind of improve the creative direction, I would say let Jeff Jarrett book Rampage for a month and see what he does with it. And if the direction for Rampage works, see if you can start moving and kind of like transitioning his approach over to Dynamite, because, and this has been a talking point of AEW for a while now, where it's like, it's not that the show is bad, it's that it's a lot of little things that they do that are easily fixable that would improve the show greatly, and they don't do it. And that's a point that I've been making for a long time now, where it's like, it's a lot of little things that they don't do. And things like having way too many title matches on TV, or doing not promoting stories properly to where things should matter, like Jade Cargill and the baddies. It's like, oh, all the baddies left her, and like, I completely lost track of who was in that group, and that undermines everybody involved, especially Jade, who's supposed to be one of their big stars. I will say this, that women's street fight that they did on Rampage a while back was a contender for worst match of the year. Although Ruby Soho and Anna Jay deserve raises after that thing for their work in it. Willow Nightingale, that powerbomb spot off the stage scared the holy bejesus out of me, because I thought she killed Anna. And Ty Conti didn't sell anything right. It was kind of embarrassing, actually. I was like, I thought she was better than that, but it was like, I don't know if she was just having an off night or what. But that match was absolutely dreadful, and I feared for Anna Jay's safety with some of the bumps she took. And but it's a shame, because it was probably Ruby Soho's best individual performance, but it was in a bad match, which is unfortunate. But yeah, it's the women's street fight and the pitch black match that are my picks for the 2 worst matches of the year so far. We already have 2 worst of contenders for the year. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to say about AEW right now. It's just they're trucking along. I just wish they would do things a little bit differently to kind of make things matter more. Like, just as an example, Hangman Page and Moxley. They, instead of having Hangman win on his first match back, I would have done like a disqualification or a double count out or something like that, and set up the necessity for a last man standing match or something. Like maybe do some kind of angle where Moxley gets hurt after being thrown off the stage or something, and then do a last man standing match instead of having Moxley get beat. And kind of like completing Hangman's return story. It's like, well, why are they still feuding? I don't even know. Hangman already got his win back, so who cares? A bunch of little things like that would help the show tremendously. Disqualifications are okay. Countouts are okay. They're valuable tools to help you continue stories. That's how I view it anyway. But that's really all there is about AEW right now. I just wanted to give my current thoughts on their current direction, which kind of a mixed bag. All right, now let's get into New Japan. I watched Wrestle Kingdom 17. I should note, I watched the Tokyo Dome show. I did not watch the New Japan versus Noah show that happened a few weeks later, which was also considered part of Wrestle Kingdom. The only clip I saw of that was Okada's moment where he flipped out and beat the ever-living shit out of that guy. I was like, man, that looked cool. And apparently the whole thing was a work. I'm like, man, I was getting some hardcore Holly vibes watching that one, just making a bitch out of Matt Capitelli. But that's exactly what that reminded me of. But that looked pretty cool. But other than that, I didn't watch any of that show. But I did watch Wrestle Kingdom. It's an annual tradition for me now. And overall, I thought the show was worth it for the big match that was advertised, but it was lacking in other areas. Kind of like what I said about the Royal Rumble. The big stuff delivered, but some of the underneath stuff, it didn't feel like a complete show, but the big match made it worth checking out. So overall, a worthwhile viewing. There wasn't much to say about the pre-show, although the Inoki tribute match was kind of cool to see. That was just a nice little thing to have, because we also lost the legendary Antonio Inoki. So getting that tribute match in was nice. It was just nice. So that was the best part of the pre-show. The IWGP Junior Tag Title match, Catch 2-2 and Leo Rush's tag team, I forget the name of it, That was a nice, high-flying, action-packed opener. Pretty much what you would expect out of those 4 guys. It was overall a solid match, solid opener. Not a whole lot else to say other than that. But the next match, I have a lot to say about it. Kairi versus Tam Nakano for the IWGP Women's title. Match itself was fine, but the real story was after the match where the former Sasha Banks, Mercedes Money, made her debut, which is a big moment. Big deal. I think that, and before I say what I'm about to say, let me make it perfectly clear. I think that Sasha Mercedes is a needle mover. I think she's got huge support from fans. I think the fact that the Kairi Mercedes match that's being promoted for the show in February, which I'm going to see, if I can, if I have time, but I'm going to try and go out of my way to see that match because I do think it is a big deal. I think that she has potential to be a big money player for whatever company she works for. The fact that show sold out says a lot, and I think a lot of that is because of her. That said, this debut in the Tokyo Dome was awful. Like, everything about it was bad. I don't like the way her hair looked, the wig or whatever it was she was wearing. I didn't like the way it looked. I didn't like the music. She botched her one spot against Kairi. Well, apparently Kairi was the one that didn't take the move right, but in any case, like, starting on a spot is not starting with your first spot being a botch is never a good thing. And I think the promo she cut afterwards was even worse than the botch, and it was like, what the fuck was that? And it was like the Shockmaster's debut mixed in with Ultimate Warrior's WCW debut, where it's like everything that could have gone wrong just went wrong. And it was it was not a good start for her. And I think maybe it soured some people on her. I don't know. I'm willing to just chalk it up to things didn't go well that night. Let's just move on to the next thing and see if she can deliver come match time. We'll see. But that debut, which should have been a huge moment and the big talking point coming out of this show, ended up being kind of an embarrassment for everybody involved, which is a shame. But it didn't hurt the ticket sales for the Mercedes Money Kairi match, which is good, which is very good. But man, when I saw that play out, I was like, that is not great. And yeah, a lot of people tuned in, but they tuned in and saw her botch and saw like her not be as cool as the Sasha Banks that we saw in WWE. So again, I have my worries about involving Mercedes. She has not gone to AEW yet. She was not the mystery partner. Going back to what I said, last year I said people are going to be expecting Sasha in that match, and if you don't have her, you got to get ahead of that and just say that it's not her right away, which they tried to do by making it Toni Storm, but I still think people were expecting Mercedes, and that created kind of a scenario where AEW had egg on their face, and it's one that could have been easily avoided, but they did it, again, one of those little things that they did to themselves. And now it looks like they're kind of course correcting and making Saraya and Toni Storm the heels and doing like kind of an outsiders versus originals thing. But again, we'll see how that all plays out. But for right now, Mercedes, I've got some question marks on her because her debut was not very good for New Japan. And I'm concerned about involving her in other shows moving forward. But again, we'll see how it all goes. I could be wrong. I could be dead wrong. And this was just a one-night thing where for whatever reason it just didn't work. But man, did it not work. Next up was something I really enjoyed, FTR versus Bishamon for the IWGP Tag Team titles. One of the better IWGP Tag Team titles I've ever seen. FTR is great. FTR is wonderful. They're the best tag team around, at least as far as their work goes. And I love watching them, and this was another case where I love watching them. Now, they've lost all of their titles, and we don't know exactly what's up in their future. The Gun Club held a funeral for them on AEW, which, by the way, I'm starting to really like the Gun Club. I think they're kind of catchy. Again, you talk about pushing young guys. It's like, let them see if they can get over first before you start, like, pushing them to the moon, which is part of the problem with Wheeler Yuta, part of the problem with Daniel Garcia. It's just kind of like, okay, let's pick that guy and we're going to push him to the moon. And it's like, why don't you like give them small opportunities, see if they do well in those opportunities and see if they can get over naturally. Like the Gun Club's kind of doing that with me. The Acclaim before them kind of did that with me, where it was a bunch of little things that got them over time. And it wasn't just like, let's ram them down people's throats forever. So word of advice to AEW. But anyways, this tag title match I thought was very, very good and completely worthy of FTR, even in defeat. And yeah, it's kind of interesting looking at the show where like you had WWE involvement, you had AEW involvement, you had Noah involvement. It was like a real like multinational, multi-company like affair here. It was kind of neat actually. Then we had the IWGP TV title match because of course New Japan needs more belts. The tournament finals, Zack Sabre Jr. taking on Ren Narita, and Zack Sabre Jr. won to become the first ever TV champion. Again, like I don't care about this belt. New Japan and pretty much every wrestling company at this point has way too many belts, but this match was a solid example of what Zack Sabre Jr. can do. He's one of my favorite workers to watch. Like purely from an in-ring aspect, I love watching him work. He's just a total artist and technician in there in the ring, and this was another example of that. Not one of his best matches, but if you've never seen Zack Sabre Jr. before, watch that match and you get an idea of why people like me like him so much. He's like the perfect mid-carder, I think, and I don't mean that as a knock. He's like, I would love, if I was a promoter, I would love to have him on my card. Absolutely, I love the guy to death. Then we had the other mid-card title match, the Never Openweight title. Carl Anderson losing the belt to Tama Tonga. Match was okay until they blew the finish. That was not great. That stun gun did not come off well at all. That was a weak way to win a title, but them's the breaks sometimes. Then we had the final match of Kenji Muto, the Great Muta, in New Japan as he tagged with Tanahashi and Umino to take on members of LIJ in a 6-man tag. This was not as good as the Nakamura Muta match from a few weeks earlier from a couple of days earlier, the Noah New Year's show. I didn't watch that whole show. I did watch that match. That match was very cool. It was like, man, Muta can still go, even at 60-some years old. He's on this retirement tour right now, but that match came off really, really well. This one just kind of felt like, hey, they're just going to do spots for a bit, and Muta's going to be Muta, and that's it. It was just kind of a typical Legends match, and was nowhere near as cool as the Nakamura-Muta spot, where Nakamura, gave him the kiss of death, where he sucked the mist back up and used it on him. That was a really cool spot, but this one was just kind of a normal match. I was like, yeah, it's cool to see Muta, but that's about it. That's all there was to this one. Then we had the 4-way for the IWGP Junior title, which was Takahashi, Ishimori, El Desperado, and Master Wato. This was an action-packed, high-flying car wreck of a match, pretty much what you would expect out of these. I've seen better versions of this match, but this was still, if you like that type of match where it's high-flying, all action from bell to bell, this match would definitely be right up your alley. It was very good and very entertaining for what it was. Then we got the best match on the show, the true main event that made this event worth the price of admission. Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay for the U.S. title. Excellent match. Excellent match. Both guys gave everything they had, and it was a wonderful, exciting encounter between two of the best in the business. And this was a match that they basically sold the show on. It was worth the price of admission, made Wrestle Kingdom worth checking out, and was a very, very good match overall. Probably my favorite match of the year thus far, although we've still got 11 months to go. So there you go. But yeah, this match was incredible. It made the whole show worth it, and it kind of highlighted how weak the main event was. Kazuchika Okada versus Jay White, with Okada winning back the IWGP title. This is a match I just feel like, unlike Omega and Ospreay, this was a match I feel like I've seen it 24 times. It probably hasn't been that many, but I've seen it a lot. And White and Okada have had good matches, but they don't have that same excellent upper tier level of chemistry that like Okada and Tanahashi had, or Okada and Naito have, or Okada and Omega have. Okada's great, by the way. This just kind of felt like eating stale pancakes. It's like, yeah, I've seen it before, whatever. And it was kind of a weak sauce main event. Probably the weakest the least interesting Wrestle Kingdom main event that I've watched since I've started watching Wrestle Kingdom. So there's debate and talk about what the future holds for Jay White. Where he's going to end up. He was a rumored participant in the Royal Rumble. Didn't happen. There's talks of him going to AEW. Hasn't happened yet. Not since he made brief appearances last year for Forbidden Door that ultimately didn't amount to too much. But it's it'll be interesting to see where he winds up, because I do think he's a worthwhile talent. I just think in this case, it's like, really, when I saw the card, I was like, really, that's your main event? It's like, we've been down this road. I've seen it before. That's not that interesting, but kind of a weak sauce main event. And overall, like, Wrestle Kingdom was a worthwhile show, mainly for Omega and Ospreay and a couple of other things here and there, but not as good as some other past Wrestle Kingdoms, which are some of the better shows of the year typically. This one kind of felt like something was lacking. And the last show I'm going to review is Impact Wrestling's Hard to Kill. Yeah, I'm kind of starting to get back into watching Impact Wrestling again after taking a long break from watching them. It's been a while, but I decided to check out Hard to Kill. And overall, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a solid pay-per-view, and I'm actually getting back into the habit of watching Impact. We'll see if that's a worthwhile endeavor. I'm about 2 episodes in, and we're like, oh, okay, there's some fun stuff on here, but for right now, looking at Hard to Kill, like I said earlier, I thought the Don West tribute was very nice to see and very cool. I thought it was weird that they opened up with the Full Metal Mayhem match for the world title. Josh Alexander successfully defending against Bully Ray, because it was a wild hardcore match where they used quite literally everything but the kitchen sink. I think they crammed a little bit too much into it, like doing a Dreamer heel turn tease was a bit much and completely unnecessary, but overall I thought the match was good, wild, fun, and it really shows that, like, Josh Alexander, what I think he's lacking in the charisma department. He kind of reminds me of, like, he's like Impact's version of Bob Backlund, where he's just held the belt forever and he's always main eventing, and it's like, you don't have anybody a little bit flashier than him, that's all you got, but come match time when the bell rings, he's a reliable hand and he comes through, and this is another example of that. Yeah, I thought the match was overall good, wild, fun. I was surprised it was the opener, but I think they did that because the Mickey match was kind of the big match that they were selling as, like, the main attraction, and if they'd put this on right before that match, it probably would have worn people out for the Mickey match. So maybe it was a good move to just open up with the wild, crazy, hardcore spot fest and let them cool down after a while and then get excited again for the Mickey match. The next match was pure filler, tag title match, Machine Guns defending against Rhino and Slater, the Bullet Club, and the Major Players. I expected the Major Players to win. They did not. They kept it on the Machine Guns. But the big talking point was after the match where Frankie Kazarian came out and announced that he is now signed to Impact Wrestling, which I think is good for him. I think in AEW he just kind of got lost in the shuffle, especially with all the young talents coming in and everything. And Kazarian in Impact just kind of fits. It feels like peanut butter and jelly, and I think he can do some good stuff there. So good to see him back, and hopefully he does some good stuff for Impact moving forward. Then we got Joe Hendry versus Moose for the Impact Digital Media title. God, they've got so many belts. I think Joe Hendry's pretty funny. I haven't watched too much of him, but like, his entrance is funny, his theme song's catchy, and it's like, oh, he's kind of silly and fun. There's some good stuff here. I think Moose is underrated. I think he's a good big guy, and I'm shocked that AEW hasn't tried to get him, or WWE hasn't tried to get him and rename him. I mean, WWE would rename him, absolutely, but I feel like he's a talented guy, and he hasn't reached a bigger platform. He's always been a Ring of Honor Impact guy, and I'm like, yeah, you can do more with him, right? Like, somebody's not calling Moose? I don't know. Maybe there's a reason why, but match was good, and towards the end, we got the debut of Impact's new authority figure, Santino Marella, who's been interacting with Ernest the Cat Miller on TV, which that's a pairing for you. But, again, Santino's an entertaining personality. Maybe putting him in that authority figure role is going to make the TV more fun. We'll see how that all plays out. But this was a fun match with a fun little debut and everything. Good, fun stuff. Then we got a 4-way for a title shot at the Knockouts title. Masha Slamovich, great name. Deonna Purrazzo, Taylor Wilde, which, by the way, I have a question. When did she become a weird tarot card reader? When did that become her gimmick? Because it was weird seeing her come out in all black and, like, on TV she's, like, reading tarot cards and all this other stuff. I'm like, that's an interesting turn for her after she was the plucky underdog when she first came on the scene in, like, 07, 08. But in any case, I've just caught my attention. I was like, that's an interesting switch for her. And Killer Kelly for the women's title shot. Match was okay. Masha won, which kind of surprised me. I would have thought it would have gone to Deonna, but in any case, it's like, okay, nice solid match. Showcases the division a little bit. Provides a little bit of filler. Then we got the Falls Count Anywhere match between Steve Maclin and Rich Swann, which was mostly fought backstage and was a good kind of hardcore Attitude Era style match. It was good for what it was. Good solid stuff. Then we got the pure wrestling match of the night, Eddie Edwards versus Mr. PWI 500, Jonathan Gresham. Good technical match all around. Makes you forget that Eddie has been a hardcore guy for the last few years. Oh no, he can actually wrestle. That was kind of his bread and butter for years and years until Impact turned him into a hardcore weirdo. But this was a good technical match that, again, had another return punctuate the match afterwards, where PCO came back. And PCO, it's like, man, good job, Pierre. It's like, you reinvented yourself and you've created a character that gets people to mark out. You're like one of those like indie staples now. And it's like, good for you. Good stuff. And I like PCO, so it's good to have him back. And then we got the main event, Mickie James versus Jordynne Grace in a career versus title match. Very good main event. My only real knock on it is that, and I'm a traditionalist in this aspect, but I would have preferred it if Jordynne Grace was just a straight up heel and like just wanted to end Mickie James's career and just went into this thing as this really hated heel. Because I prefer the heel face dynamic over the I respect you, but I'm going to beat you type of flair, where she's a baby face, but she's de facto heel for the night because she's going up against Mickie, who might retire. So it's just kind of like, I would have preferred it if Jordynne was just a straight up heel and was like a bully and actively sought to end Mickie James's career. But there was that spot with the fake tap out, which is being worked into the storyline to create a rematch between them, which is interesting. I'm okay with that. The overall match was very, very good. The crowd was into it, and Mickie was like the conquering hero who ultimately got the win, and the celebration with her son afterwards was really cool to see. So a lot of pomp and circumstance there, and a very good main event and good stuff. And Hard to Kill overall, I was like, that was pretty good. It was a pretty good show overall, and it was like, give Impact a chance. And I decided to start watching it again, and I'm kind of enjoying it. So I've worked that into my regular rotation. Now, we've got other things to look forward to for other companies. MLW has Jacob Fatu going up against Hammerstone, which I'm going to check that out as well. We've got Mercedes Money taking on Kyrie, which I've brought that up. And, of course, we're into WrestleMania season, where we've got Elimination Chamber coming up, and we'll get an idea of what the WrestleMania card's going to look like over the next couple of weeks. And AEW looks like we're going to have MJF and Bryan Danielson in an hour-long Iron Man match for the title. And that'll be interesting to see if MJF can work that style of match. I'm definitely going to see it. Like, I'm definitely going to go out of my way to check that out. So there's a lot of stuff to look forward to in February. Maybe I'll take the entire month of February off and then do a big February in review. Maybe that's the format for my videos moving forward. Just do one video a month where I review the entire month. I don't know. We'll see how it all plays out. But a lot of exciting stuff to look forward to. And okay, I have rambled on and on about professional wrestling for long enough. That is the end of the wrestling talk. So if you're only here for the wrestling talk, that part of the video is done. You can tune out now. But I have one more thing that I want to talk about, and that is football. I want to talk about the Super Bowl, which is all set up now after Championship Sunday. Philly, the Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to make my prediction right now. Based on everything I've seen leading up to this point, the Eagles look like a well-oiled machine that crushed my team in the playoffs, and then they turn around and crushed a really good San Francisco team that I thought was going to be far more competitive and ended up not being so. And I looked at what happened in the championship game against Kansas City, where they kind of got a couple of breaks. A big penalty, which was a good call, but the penalty at the end kind of set them up for a win when it looked like it was going to go to overtime. And I'm kind of like, Patrick Mahomes has an injury, which, based on what I saw in the NFC Championship game, that's just going to make the Eagles smell blood. If I had to make a prediction right now, I'm kind of leaning on Philly to win this one. Although it is interesting that we're getting Andy Reid versus the team that Andy Reid was famous for coaching. And really, the Eagles were great under Andy Reid, and the fact that they don't have a Super Bowl from that era, it's one of those weird things that just boggles my mind. I don't know how they didn't win a Super Bowl during that era, because they were really, really good. But that's kind of neat. The Kelsey Bowl, that's another aspect of this. That's a fun storyline, but I'm not hopeful for Kansas City's chances, so let's put it that way. I'm kind of anticipating Philly to win this one. But what I really want to talk about is the season of the New York Giants, my team, who got swept by the Philadelphia Eagles 3-0, got swept by the Dallas Cowboys this season 2-0, And, starting off like that, you'd probably think I'm wildly embarrassed by my team, but I am actually not. Coming into this season, we had a new coach with Dayball, and I'm kind of looking at this situation. I'm like, look, guys, we have been absolute dog shit for the last 5-6 seasons, feels like a decade and a half. It's been terrible. It's like, look, I'm not expecting you to move mountains. I'm not expecting you to win the Super Bowl. I'm not going to ask for anything crazy. Can you win 7 games? That's all I ask. Can we get some goddamn improvement here? And I am happy to report that they overachieved what my expectations and my desires, and ended up being a pretty solid team, all things considered. Now, I think that we have holes in key positions where we need talent, especially on defense. The secondary is lacking. Wide receivers, we are really lacking at wide receiver. Golden Tate was a bust. We've got some holes to fill, but I think the coaching, and I think Daniel Jones having the best season of his career. I mean, the 2 games he played, the game against the Colts and the playoff game against Minnesota, were the 2 best games I've ever seen Daniel Jones have. He cut out the turnovers, and he finally started playing like he deserved top billing. Because one of my criticisms of him early on is that when they finally benched Eli and went with him, and they were like, we're going to crown him the king of New York, he's going to be the king of football, and I'm just sitting there like, he turns over the ball a lot. And after a few seasons of this, it's like, yeah, Danny Dimes ain't it. And this is the best season he's had, easily. And it's like he finally cut out a lot of the mistakes that made me so frustrated with him, and showed that maybe he is the quarterback we need to kind of lead the team going forward. Saquon Barkley came back from injury and played really well most of the season, was a valuable weapon that opened up the passing game, and even for Daniel Jones to get a couple of runs in. Very valuable in that regard. And, I look at some of the play calling was much better this time around. For the most part, we made some boneheaded plays, especially going forward on 4th and 8th in the playoff game was a head scratcher. But we had some ballsy play calling, like in week 1 against, I believe it was Tennessee, where they decided to go for the 2-point conversion and win the game rather than settle for the tie. It's like, you know what? Even if they didn't get it, I would have respected it. Because, just go for the win. Screw this. Nobody expects anything out of us anyway. And I went into the season with very low expectations and just the want for 7 wins, and I ended up getting 9 wins and a playoff victory, which I never anticipated. I never thought the Giants would win a playoff game this season. So the fact that it happened, I think the Giants massively overachieved this season in a division that was very competitive, because it makes me sick to say it, but the Eagles were the best team in the NFL, and Dallas was very, very good, with a couple of inconsistent performances, but overall Dallas was one of the better teams in the league. And I think for us to be competitive in that division, which, by the way, the Washington Commanders, also a pretty good team that almost made the playoffs. We almost had a situation where all 4 teams from the NFC East made the playoffs, which I think speaks to how competitive that division really was, even with the best team in the league and arguably, a team that was in the top 5 in the league, and you had the Giants and the Commanders kind of nipping at their heels all the way through. It was a very tight competitive division, and the fact that we made it to the playoffs and won a game, I think is a huge, huge improvement and a bit of a sigh of relief for Giants fans. Yes, it sucks getting swept by Dallas. Yes, it sucks getting swept by Philly, but I will take a season with that and getting destroyed in the divisional round of the playoffs. I'll take that season over winning less than 5 games any year. Any year. And I think we made some major improvements this year, and I think Dayball is the guy. I think he's a strong contender for Coach of the Year, and if it's not him, it's going to go to Peterson for Jacksonville, who also had a miraculous turnaround this year and did really, really well. That comeback game they had in the playoffs was unbelievable, and I think Jacksonville had a hell of a run. I felt bad when they got eliminated because they were kind of the Cinderella team that I was kind of pulling for, but overall, things played out the way they were supposed to. But I think the Giants had a great season overall. They took a team that, again, was severely lacking in key positions. And by the way, when I say I want wide receivers, do not bring back Odell Beckham. Please, for the love of God, do not bring him back. That man was a curse on our team while he was here, and he was a curse that loomed over us after he left. It was not great. That picture he took, just haunted us. But please don't bring back Odell Beckham. Don't want him back. But the Giants did really well despite their obvious flaws. And those flaws, I think, came back to bite them eventually. Because I got to a point where it was like, eventually that's going to come back and bite us. And sure enough, it did. But still, I thought the Giants far exceeded any reasonable expectation that anybody would have ever had of them. And the fact that they did as well as they did, I think, is a very positive sign of improvement for the Giants. And hopefully we can improve moving forward. It's like, okay, again, competition's going to be tight next year with Philly and Dallas, but hopefully we can measure up against them a little bit better next year. And that's going to be the measuring stick. It's like, okay, you surpassed my 7-game goal. Now let's see if we can be competitive with Philly and Dallas next year. That should be kind of the goal. And at least, like, not get swept by them. Let's shoot for that. Let's make the playoffs, not get swept by Philly and Dallas. At least split with them. We'll see how that goes. But next season is going to be exciting. I look forward to seeing what the Giants do. There are some salary cap issues with them, so I don't know how well they're going to be able to fill some of those gaps. But I think the potential is there for them to get better next year, and hopefully that potential goes fulfilled. But after all my long-winded rambling, I am finally done here. Thanks again to everybody for watching this massive monstrosity of a video. If you want to keep up with me, the link to my Twitter is in the description down below. You can also like, subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos. But that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching, and I will see you all later.